the idea behind the model was that the way that we do risk stratification today or provide prognosis to our patients are based on averages. So we call the patient, say, your median overall survival is this, and your risk of transformation to acute myeloid leukemia is this. And I've seen a lot of frustrations out of my patients because what they want after we have the consultations, these numbers are great, but what is my number? And our prior research that we have shown that actually what we are predicting with our current models compared with the actual survival of the patients is completely different. And this is very important. So prognosis is important from the patient standpoint because help them to understand their disease, set up their expectations about their journey for the disease. And of course, the first question comes up out of any cancer patient is how long are you going to live? And for the treating physicians it's also extremely important because all our census guidelines and treatment recommendations are based on risk. So we have really traditionally classified patients into lower risk and higher risk. And the treatment algorithm for those patients are completely different. So if the model telling you that the patient has a lower risk, but the disease behaves like a higher risk, now you're under-treating these patients, and vice versa. If the model is telling you that the patient is a higher risk and the actual disease behaves like a lower risk, now you're over-treating these patients. So we thought, is there a way that we can put together clinical data and mutational data, harnessing the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning to build a model that can provide personalized prediction that is specific for the patient, that's different between patient and patient, even in the same group. So to do that, we took clinical data from a Cleveland Clinic and combined with the data from Munich Leukemia Laboratory in Germany. And this is about a cohort of 1,417 patients. And we built a model on that cohort. We use a machine learning algorithm called random survival forest. And then we validated the model in completely independent cohort from Moffitt Cancer Center. And it's really important when we build machine learning algorithm models, there's a lot of concept out there that these models are always like a black box. You don't know what's going on inside the models. But today we have several techniques, we call it feature extraction. Try to highlight the important variables that impacted the algorithm decision and just extract those variables. And this is important. Number one, try to learn about these variables. And just number two, to make sure that the model actually including variables that make sense to us clinically. And after we finalize the model, of course, when you finalize the model, there is no way you can use it like the traditional model where you have a scoring system, you can sum it up and come up with a prognosis of the patients. So we build a web application where the user can put clinical and mutational data and hit calculate, and then what you get out of it, survival probability at different time points that is specific for the patient. You also get AML transformation risk that is specific for the patients. Now, when we look at the accuracy of our model and compare it to standard models like IPSS or IPSS-R, this model outperformed them in terms of the accuracy of overall survival and leukemia-free survival. So we hope that with this approach, try now to kind of think the way that we think about prognosis. Are we ready to do personalized prediction? We talk all the time about personalized treatment for the patients, but maybe we should start talking about personalized prediction that is specific for the patient. And I think it's very important for our patient, and it's also important for our physicians. You are classifying patients in the right risk category and thus providing them with the right treatment that match their risk. Because the treatment in general, if you're taking cancer, we tend to be less aggressively treating patients with lower risk disease of progression, lower risk disease of chronic acute myeloid leukemia. We tend to be more aggressive in treating patients with higher risk features. So we really want to tailor your therapy. If you have a patient that you label them as a lower risk, but their disease behaves like a higher risk, you're under-treating these patients and vice versa. This is why we build the model. So if you said, yes, on average, the difference between low risk and intermediate, there is difference in survival. But if you look at specifically each patient, you might find some individual who their disease behave much worse than even very high risk or high risk, and vice versa. When we revised the International Prognostic Scoring System, the IPSS, the original model, included 4 risk categories. Low, intermediate 1, which consider lower risk, intermediate 2, and high, which consider higher risk. With the IPSS-R revision, now we have 5 risk categories. So we have very low, low, that's lower risk, high and very high risk. What about intermediate? And what we found, as I showed in the graph, that these patients behave all over the place. Some of them are like lower risk, some of them like higher risk, some of them in between. It's very heterogeneous group. And that's what I think when we build current models today, we're underestimating the amount of heterogeneity, the difference between the outcome of those patients, the outcome for our patients. The presentation on Monday, what we show, number one, is the website that we showed today, but also we can take 3 patients, for example, put the clinical variables of those patients and put the survival probability. And what we show actually, when the survival probability drops below 50%, there is really high chance that the patient will not make it to that time point. So if the survival probability drops below 50% at 6 months, there's really high chance that this patient's survival not going to make it to 6 months. And that will help us, of course, in the future. Now, what we're trying to do is to see if we have the implications of treatment, would that change our management? And we're currently working on that. Here you have 2 new concepts, and the change takes time. So the first concept is a personalized prediction, and the other concept, which is still need a lot of work for physicians, is the machine learning, because it's hard for us as a physician to accept or know what the algorithm is doing. So I think with time, now we're refining the model, we're getting better models, and with time we're going to probably get to this concept that we really need to focus on personalized prediction. And once we get to that point, I think after that we will incorporate all these approaches probably in our clinical trials, how to counsel patients, and so on. So we're finalizing the web application, and the reason it's not yet because we're trying to incorporate as much information as we can. And as I mentioned, there is also thought about how do you make the application also useful for patients, not just only for physicians, try to help them understand their prognosis and those things. And I'm trying to figure out a way to do that. And then the other thing, should we incorporate all the models so you can enter the clinical variables and mutation and you get this personalized model as well as the other models, so you can see the difference between the survival that's these models predicting and this model. So we're working on that, and we hope we finalize the website very soon.